Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Elevation Association Experience Podcast. We are your hosts, Dr. Jared Hill, Dr. Dan Nelson. Welcome back. It's good to have you guys with us again. Excited to talk today about something that I think is actually relevant to everybody. And it's learning how to take time off. Making sure that you're getting enough vacation. Boy, that sounds like a first world problem, right, Jared?
Sounds like it, but it is one of the hardest things a dentist can do.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we just recently met with a doc in California, freaking rad dude, such a stud. And I actually met with two of them in California that seems to be a trend, that they were talking about how they hadn't taken any vacation time in like years. And that was kind of that. I remember thinking, man, that sucks. You don't go to school this long and work this hard just to be a slave to your job, and it's just neither one of them for various reasons felt like they could, afford to take work off or felt like that it was something that was in their purview. And so I think that we should talk about it. I think it's something that needs to be discussed and for pertinent reasons. I mean, it's a yeah, like you said, it's a big deal in dentistry, right?
Yeah, no, and it's actually, if you're strategic about it, it is beneficial for your overall well-being. Matter of fact, not just beneficial, but necessary for your well-being. And so I think the podcast today will be great. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about why it improves your overall health and your mental and physical, spiritual health. We'll talk about maybe some of the reasons why we don't do it or what our barriers are, and then talk about how to overcome those. And it's gonna be good. It's gonna be a good podcast. This is one of the ones that, especially as a younger dentist, maybe a younger meaning even like the first 10 years of practice, if you're a practice owner, is really difficult to accomplish. You just feel so tied to your debt, tied to your practice. There's just several reasons why, but let's jump into, first of all, like why it's good for you. What does vacation do for us? Why even take it, or why are we even talking about this?
Yeah, and I think too, as we talk about why it's good, I have to say that, Jared, for you guys that have talked to us, you probably heard this a little bit, but Jared was a mentor for me for the idea of taking time off. It was interesting. The first week that I came here to work at Wood River Dental, I just come out of the military. The military actually has a lot of time off built into it, and you work 5 days a week, but you have a lot of days off. And so it's just kind of what I was used to. And Jared pulled me, didn't pull me aside, but we were talking one day, and he's like, "Hey, he's like, you need to take a calendar and map out your days off for the next year." He's like, you need to make sure you're taking that time off for so many reasons. But he's like, you need to make sure you're taking off for your mental health more than anything else. He said, it's easy to burn out in dentistry. And at that point, I knew you had kind of talked your story about, I'm going to Tonga and stuff like that, but it was coming from a place of legitimate concern. And it was like, look, I'm going to stop you right now before you get too deep into this, and make sure you're taking care of yourself, moving forward. It was interesting because it was one of the first things that we talked about as far as like, what's practice like in the real world outside of the military. And it kind of surprised me that you would every year for the first 2-3 years, in January, Jared would put a calendar on my desk, and then he'd say, "Okay, map out your days off." And he would already have his calendar worked out. And so I always thought, I was struck by how profound that was, but I don't think that I realized in that moment just how profound it was, because I was hungry, I was eager, I was, looking to make good money and all that stuff. And so I probably took it for granted in the beginning, but as I began to, the longer I worked, the more I appreciated the relevance of that. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of point that out before we jump into some of this stuff. But yeah, I think that we have to understand that time off improves your overall well-being. It's not, it's complete, right? Um, we're going to quote a lot of scientific data in this. We pulled some data that to help give validity to the conversation. But like you were saying, Jared, it measures it measurably improves your physical and psychological well-being, right? So there's a there's a 2025 meta-analysis in the Journal of Applied Psychology where they reviewed 32 studies from 9 countries and found that that vacations have a large positive effect on employee well-being, and those positive effects lasted longer than the research suggested that they thought it would. So the greatest improvements occurred when people psychologically detached from work and engaged in physical activity while they were away. So
Yeah.
that's a
I
huge
think
thing for you, right?
Yeah, I think that's important. I think when talking about vacations, and the reason why, what I learned early on is to when I plan them out, you have to plan for a good vacation. You have to plan for a productive vacation. That sounds dumb, but just stepping away and then just showing up somewhere and being like, I'm just, and then you don't do anything, and you're still checking your emails or whatever, and you're still getting the emergency calls or whatever it is. You're not detaching from your work, and if you're not physically active, you're really kind of just wasting time on it. You're taking time away from the office, and it's not doing much for you. Yes, you're not at work at the grind, but yeah, I think those are two really important things to consider when planning vacations. And I think that this research just validates that. One, psychologically detach from it. What does that mean? We'll talk about a couple ways to psychologically detach from your work. You have to be able to step away. You have to be able to disconnect, and you have to be okay with it. You can't feel guilty about it, right? You have to be able to make the arrangements ahead of time so that you can do that. Two, do something physical. We are stuck in an office where we are in a chair a lot. Yes, maybe we're walking around, or I mean, in some cases, running around between operatory to operatory, but you're really not being physically active. So do something physically active. It doesn't have to be crazy. You don't have to go hike Everest, right? But do something physically active that is something that would just be out of the ordinary, something that gets says the endorphins going. They get your blood pumping and allow you to experience different activities.
So you always tell people when you go on vacation, you need what, a day or two to completely detach. What do you mean by that when you say, "Hey, I need time to detach from"? Because you're not like you always say, "Look, I can't just have a 2-day vacation because then it doesn't do much for me."
Yeah, and as I'm getting older, the time is increasing that I need to detach from work. But there's something to say about like a long weekend's not going to cut it for anybody. I'm sorry, you can't. Your mind is, as a business owner, your mind cannot detach completely. And there's some different research out there as far as how long it takes. It takes me at least 2 to 3 days just to start to unwind. I went to every year we go to Lake Powell. I just got back this week, Tuesday, a couple days ago. And the first couple of days, you're still because you're stressing about the travel. If you drive or fly or wherever you're going, for us, it's driving, getting the house more ready, the food preparations, finding this like. And then now I'm a day into the vacation, I'm still stressing out about everything. So not just like work, but everything about it. And then 2 or 3 days in, you're finally getting what, 7 or 8 hours of sleep. Like you're getting the time that you need that you don't experience maybe during the work week. But these are important times to make a vacation longer in order to detach. That is the value of a longer vacation, a week, 2 weeks if you can, you know, and maybe longer if you can do it. That'd be great.
So there was to get to back this up. There was a 2024. I'm going to read this because I'm going to mess it up. There was a 2024 JAMA Network Open study of over 3,000 U.S. physicians, and what they found was nearly 60% took 3 weeks off or less of vacation annually, and then 70% still worked while on vacation. And they found that physicians who took more than 3 weeks of vacation had significantly lower burnout, and working 30 plus minutes each day substantially increased burnout. while you're on vacation. So if you work 30 minutes plus while you're on vacation, increased burnout. um, that's I think that that's a big part of it too. I've vacationed with people that they don't vacation. They just go work somewhere else, right? They like you're with them and they're checking their email the entire time. They're on a computer, 50% of the time. They're not really on vacation. They're just working somewhere else. That's nice at a hotel, and and if you do that, you're not giving, like Jared said, you're not giving your brain an opportunity to truly disengage. And so it's that where, and we'll talk about a little bit more about this, but if you haven't created systems within your practice that allow you to walk away and not have somebody that you're the go-to answer for everything, then you're not going to be able to vacation very well. Because even when you leave, they're going to your office will call you, patients will call you, and you're not going to be able to disengage.
Yeah, let me give you one example of this is actually an insightful example of what happens of how disengaging helps you. And so I went to we go to Africa every year, as you guys know, on our humanitarian trip. I went this year at the end of May, beginning of June, and my brother-in-law came. He is not a dentist, but has a full-time job and works very hard, travels quite a bit for his job. And his job is a lot of email communication and text communication, calls, solve problems and issues. So he made a conscious decision for 2 weeks to not check his emails. And he told everybody ahead of time, of course, right? Like, hey, I'm not going to be available for 2 weeks. So if there's an issue, this person can solve it and so forth. And he said, and we'd finished the trip. We'd done the humanitarian project. We had done a safari. We're sitting in the airport in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And he finally decides to check his email because we have like 6 hours in the airport, right? Just kind of waiting and chilling and nothing to do. And it's like wrapping up. So finally goes through all of his emails and he sits down. And after a couple of hours, he's just sitting there and just kind of like, and I'm like, hey, what's up? He goes, I went through all of my emails that I missed, all the communication that everybody puts me on. And he goes, I realized something. He goes, 80% of the emails I didn't even need to respond to. I didn't even need to read. I was CC'd on, but that takes up so much time of my day. And he goes, 10%, it would have been nice for me to respond to, but there were other people on our team who probably could have or should have been the ones to respond as opposed to me. And he goes, but 10% of those emails, those are the ones that probably really affected me, but I had somebody in place to take them, and he goes, I didn't realize how much time that I was spending, checking the emails or phone calls or texts or voices. And he goes, I made me really evaluate my job and what I do with all my time in my life.
What have I done with my life?
Yeah, what are I doing in my life, right? But I think as a dentist, I think we spend so much time putting out fires ourselves, so we see ourselves as indispensable. And I think that if we give other people the opportunity, we can realize how much we can actually delegate, and we don't need to. We create this feeling of busy. I'm so busy. I'm so busy, and it gives us validation for who we are and what we do. And it's going on vacation. You can detach from those things, and you can spend time. You spend downtime actually solving bigger problems, right? You see, without being bogged down in all the emails or the daily tasks, you can actually start to tackle the bigger vision points of your practice, of your life in general, right? And you need that time. Otherwise, you're just gets eaten up on a daily basis by our default mode.
Yeah, there is this to go along with that, Jared. There is a study out of Harvard and University of North Carolina. They talk about this thing called the default mode network. So, and I think this is something that I've watched with you a lot on vacation, is that you're detached from work. So it sounds a little what I'm about to say sounds a little contradictory, and so this will hopefully solve some of that contradiction. Is that you detach from the daily grind and then you focus on, you'll focus on other parts of it's work, but it's not like the grind, right? Like you'll read a book you've wanted to read, or you'll work on you're solving a problem that is, kind of bothered you for a while, or you're just curious about, or whatever, right? And so, and what'll happen is, I would say 80% of the time, that most statistics are made up on the spot, right? So, I would say 80% of the time, when you come home from vacation, either if I'm on the vacation with you, either you share a litany of ideas with me, or you come home having discussed a litany of ideas with somebody on the vacation, right? Like, hey, what if we do this? What if we do this? What if we do this? And it's because that default mode network. So working, it's this, they call it the brain's default mode network. And they have these things they call the executive control networks, right? So that's when you're in boss mode, go time, all that stuff. Well, it's essential for that if when you're doing creative thinking, for that default mode network to turn on, and this network becomes more active during periods of rest, reflection, and internal directed thought, rather than a focused task execution. When we are in the grind, we're always on focused task execution, right? Think about it. Got to go do this exam. Got to go do this filling. Got to go do this crown. Got to go do. Those are all task execution, and so we get focused in on those things, and it doesn't allow that default mode network to kick on.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Between all of your everyday,
Dr. Devin Irene, poke your head in and say hi.
Howdy, everybody.
Oh, we got a guest coming on.
Guest star, Dr. Devin Irene.
I would have dressed up nicer had I known Devin was going to be here.
I know. Well, I've got a T-shirt on. I feel dumb. Anyway, what were you going to say, Jared?
Yeah. All of your daily tasks, besides just the dentistry, right? The dentistry, you do all the exams, all the procedures, so forth. Then you have to review your P&L. You have to review your KPIs. You have to have these team. These are all the daily tasks that are necessary to run your business. But you need time away to envision, am I accomplishing what I want to accomplish? What direction do I want to go? What direction do I want my family to go? How is this affecting me personally? And so you need time away in order to have those conversations. These are where the conversations come as far as my personal health journey. It was honestly at Lake Powell a couple years ago. I was sitting around. We were sitting on some paddle boards doing nothing. We were floating. It was one of those times, and we just had these conversations of, I'm not feeling very good. Oh, hey, here's what I've been doing. This is what helps. This is what you should think about doing. And also, this same health conversation happened while I was at an EA event, with some members from Texas, and they were like, "Oh, hey, here's what we're doing." But these are conversations that would not happen if you don't take time away from the daily grind. And like Dan was saying, it sounds maybe a little wrong to work outside of work, but it's a different type of work.
Yeah,
it's more fulfilling satisfaction type of. Is my daily grind fulfilling my satisfaction that I'm looking for in my life? And if you don't take time away from that, then you get caught up in the grind, because you're going to make money and it's going to be quote unquote successful, right? But is that success actually the success you're looking for? Is it leading to the significance that you're looking for? And that's as value of a vacation, and not a 2-day weekend getaway or 3-day, hey, take Monday off, or
right.
Take Friday off. I'm telling you right now, that doesn't do it. It's not enough time. It's not going to cut it.
Yeah. And to be clear, what we're talking about is again, the grind. When we talk about the grind, that's the task type of stuff that you need to disengage from. So that's we talked about checking the email and working on the computer, but what that is that's assigning tasks or to-dos, or working on your to-do list or your task list, versus letting that all go. And when you let all that go, when you get out of that type of task execution, now your brain unlocks and you start, I think for most people, it starts looking at big picture stuff, right? And you allow it to freely move to where it wants to move, rather than going, oh, I need to take care of this. Oh, I need to take care of this. Oh, I need to take care of this. And it just, it allows it to go into spaces, and that's where, at least for me, I start thinking big picture. Like I even say, I think retirement. I think, oh, okay, well, what if we did this thing, or what if what happens if we do this? And then, for us, when we do our Elevation Association CE events, where we've created these retreats. Now you have a network of docs that are in similar situations, that now we start bouncing stuff off each other, right? Like these bigger picture ideas, not just tasks, but look at talking about big picture stuff. And then you really start to gain a lot of traction with, like, oh, I tried this, or I did that, or I'm working on this. And that collaborative effort, I think, really takes off and creates some really cool outcomes. Yeah, so I think that the take home from this idea is your brain, it doesn't stop working when you stop working, right? It's not like you just can shut it all off. It simply starts working on different kinds of problems. And I think that that's the important thing to take away from this idea, is that get yourself out of the realm of task assignment, task completion, or to-dos, or whatever you want to call them, and allow it to work on the things that are naturally going to go to. And the other thing is, if you're married, or in a relationship, and you bring your significant other with you, that's another time where you guys are going to probably start working on big picture stuff with family, with, situational type of not necessarily problems, but just maybe things that need to be discussed, or worked through, and it's fun. That's where you start to, like, really start to plan out some cool parts of your life. But if you're always stuck in the grind, you're locking that part out, and you're not going to allow that to open up. So you literally need to take time away for that to happen. And I think that's to your point, right, Jared? Like, you can't just do it over 2 days. You're going to be your brain's still locked in that task mode. So yeah, that's a great point. Love that.
Yeah, and along those lines, as far as going on vacations with your spouse, let me just tell you, I don't know if this is the right place in the podcast, but I'm just going to tell you my philosophy as far as how many vacations at a minimum you should take in a year,
Yeah.
and why, right? And that's okay if I share that now. I'm just thinking, I
No,
would,
no, you can't. We can only do it on the 34th minute.
okay.
I don't
So
even know.
I'm gonna interject. Yeah. So I would say this. I would take a week with just you and your spouse. It's okay to leave your kids with somebody. I don't care how old they are. It's okay to leave your kids with somebody
Yes.
for a week. And you need that time away to have valuable conversations. And it could be anything. My wife and I, one time, one of our favorite ones, we just went up to Stanley, Idaho, which is about an hour and a half away, 2 hours away. We rented a tiny home. We visited hot springs on a daily basis, but it was just some time away for us, just to reconnect, to have important conversations. You have your year planning session if you want to with your spouse, whatever it is, but just it gets you on the same page. Because often you get caught in these day-to-day interactions, you put stuff on the calendar and you don't talk about it or whatever, but it allows you to reconnect and get together. Second, take a week with your family. Take your kids somewhere. There's only there's only like 15 or 16 spring breaks or less, because maybe they're younger, maybe they won't remember them, that you'll get with your kids, whether it's spring break or whether it's a summer vacation or both. Take a week, spend some time with your kids. I would do that. Third, I would spend a week with other 1 week with other dental professionals, that's a lot of time, but do it in the right way. Like, so like you said, Dan, every year we do a week long vacation in February with other dental professionals and their spouses. Small groups. There's 20 of us. We're a small group, 20 couples, or we're 15, 20 couples. It takes a couple days to kind of break down some barriers, get to know each other, sometimes a little bit longer, but by the end of the time, you're always better talking about big picture vision of your practice and your life when you can collaborate with another dental professional. And then four, I would leave 1 week for a spontaneous, I don't know if I'll call it spontaneous, but at least, hey, I spark an idea of a vacation with friends or family. So I've got a brother that lives in Korea, and we leave that open just in case we need to go visit them or do something else, whatever that is. That's 4 weeks of vacation, which sounds at first mind blown. The first 10 years of my practice, I never took a full week. I never took a spring break with my kids, and I deeply regret that. So I sit down and plan this out. Take at least those 4 weeks, if not longer. Take 5, take 6 weeks if you can, Do it wisely, of course, plan for it. That's why Dan and I, that's why we look at our calendar at the beginning of the year and say, look, this week I'm going to be gone. You're here this week. This week we're both gone, right? Um, and if we're both gone, if we're both at our Dental Legacy Foundation, or if we're both at our EA event, then we need to plan for coverage and make sure that's covered. But whatever those weeks are, make sure you plan those out ahead of time so you don't feel guilty leaving. Right? So you can say, I've planned for this. We're financially prepared for it. I know that I'm not going to be producing whatever you produce in a week, whatever you do, 60, 80, 100 grand, whatever if you're a high producer. You just know that you're not going to be doing that. That's okay. Maybe you work an extra day a month, whatever it is to cover for it, but plan that out ahead of time. I think those are some important vacations to get on the calendar and allow yourself to take that time off. If you can't do it, if you're in such a tight spot that you can't do it this year, okay, that's fine. But next year, make that your 2027 goal or 2028 goal. That's what my goal is, to be able to take these 4 weeks off at least, whatever that may be.
Yeah. I have two other pro tips to add to that, Jared. And one would be to follow your gut. And what I mean by that is like go where the food is good.
Seriously.
I'm a foodie, so I'm like, ooh, where should we go? I was like, well, they have good food there. Let's go there. That sounds yummy.
Never a bad idea.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Just follow your gut. The second one is that create novel experiences, especially if they're so give your kids some novel experiences, but also yourself. Some of the most memorable things you'll do are things that are novel. The brain loves novelty. It loves new experiences. And especially if it's not in the on the confines of change. So the brain doesn't like change necessarily. So like if you're, you can have a novel experience because you're forced into change. The brain doesn't necessarily like that. But if it's planned novel experience and you're going to go do something that's new for that you haven't done before, the brain loves that. And then those are super memorable experiences. We've made it a point in our family to invest more in experiences than in stuff, which is hard for me because I love freaking stuff. I love stuff. But, stuff for me is things that I have passion about. And then there's more meaning to it behind it. There's more satisfaction. We had the presentation at the Dentist Money Summit was freaking on point about that. I can't remember who it was that talked about like, don't go buy a car, go buy an experience. And he said, unless you buy a car and then join a car club, because that will create experiences for you through the car. And I thought that's freaking brilliant, in that if you want to have more fulfillment in your life, if you want to feel, more endorphin dump and all that stuff, create novel experiences and rely more on that than on just accumulating stuff, which is ironic, Jared, because I think that we hear it all the time of like, and we're going to talk about this here in a little bit more in a second, but I can't afford to take work off. And it's like, well, you have this big A house and you've done all this, you're tied up and you're paying for what? Stuff, but you haven't allowed yourself to have the freedom, the financial freedom, because you've accumulated all this stuff and that's been the focus. And then it's not being utilized for creating new experiences or novel experiences. So, or fulfilling experiences. Because I think you can have recurring really good experiences too that don't always have to be novel. I think your trips to Powell are a good example, right? Like you invested in a boat, you don't have to necessarily go to Powell, but that's something where you can get away and unwind, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when you're trying to decide on these, what these novel experiences are, we have to be honest with ourselves, because some things don't have a 5 or 10 year shelf life, right? I mean, they have to be done when they have to be done, or honestly, they'll never get done. So
Yeah.
there's seasons in life that have an expiration date, and as young as we feel, we're not always going to be able to do some of the things that we want to do. So I would just sit down and this is a great thing to do on one of your vacations, one of your week-long vacations with your wife. Sit down, is make a list of all of those things and open up the world, whatever it may be for you. And then sit down and start to put them in order of importance of what you want to do. And then put a timeline on them. Hey, this is this is probably not going to be available in my 70s, right? I probably am not going to be hiking Machu Picchu, or I'm probably not going to, whatever it is. I don't know, whatever it is. So you need to be able to, and then ours got, with my brother living in Korea and having access to Korea and Southeast Asia, that's a finite. He's not going to be there forever. He's only going to be there for another couple of years. So at most, so I'm going to take advantage of that opportunity while he's there, because after he's gone, it's just, we could go, but it's going to be more difficult and different. So sit down and make those decisions, and then understand that there's seasons in those lives, and they're there for a reason, but take advantage of those. Don't let those pass by. You'll regret it.
Yeah, amen to that, man. We're about to become empty nesters. My youngest is moving out early. She's graduating a year early and accelerated the whole like. I was like, "Hey, you're robbing me of a year." I'm feeling a little bit jaded on it, if I'm being honest, because my season just got a whole lot shorter. So stuff can happen like that too. So it's something to keep in mind. Um, One other thing to maybe consider when you're planning vacation is to get outside. I know that not everybody's outdoorsy, and not everybody, that's not their idea of like a good time is to go out and be in nature. There's a lot of ways to get into nature, and the only reason I'm bringing this up is because there's some research to support this. There was a study in the University of Michigan. Or no, it wasn't a study. It was here. Let me look at it real quick. It was it's called the attention restoration theory. And these two professors at University of Michigan proposed that natural environments restore the brain's direct attention. They say that you can reduce mental fatigue and improve focus by spending time in nature. So the theory is supported by decades of research in environmental psychology. So it's not like they're just like pulling it out of nowhere. But I think that that's an interesting thing. And I think too often people think about being outside as like going on a hike or going, traditional mountain type of outside stuff, but there's other ways to do that. And so I think for sometimes it's beach therapy for people or whatever, but getting outside and being outside, it's shown over and over again through a lot of research that it has a lot of benefits. So something to think about as you're planning your vacations.
Oh, I think it's so important. And I think it's important to note also, like, just like you said, whatever that means to you. I hate camping. Some people love it. Go for it. Go camping. I'm just who I am. I prefer other types but I love nature, right? So, and so I'm in the houseboat at Lake Powell, or I'm on a beach somewhere. That's my preferred type of nature. And I like hiking a lot. I just don't like camping. So I don't like fishing. It's not my thing. But that's what you do. Then make those experiences, because there is something about being in nature that is restorative, right? It's just it grounds you. It connects you with reality. It gets you away from the devices. It gets you away from the gram, it gets you away from whatever is tying you up on a daily basis, and just opens up your eyes and gives you clarity that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, man, amen. So I am going to advocate heavily where I suggest considering getting out into nature. I am going to advocate heavily for travel. And travel's been, like I said, we invest heavily in travel. And I'm a huge fan of Anthony Bourdain. He's crazy in a bag of cats, but man, that dude had figured some stuff out. And one of the things he said that I've really liked is he said, "Be a traveler, not a tourist." And I love that, right? Like that was something that Lindsay and I have worked really hard in our family, is to be travelers and to try to see as much of the world as possible. And it's because it changes you, right? And we were at dinner last night. My daughter's in town from California, and we were sitting down, and she was talking about growing up in the area that we live and how she kind of felt, we were talking about some of the struggles the kids had in high school. And she says, I think that one of the reasons that it was hard was because we had a bigger worldview, and we were able to see life from different perspectives that a lot of people don't get. And she said, we didn't know any different. And because we had that perspective, we would get frustrated when other people didn't have it. And I thought that was kind of interesting in the sense that they have a much greater understanding of how the world works and an appreciation. One of the things that all my kids have gotten bugged with is when there is a lot of entitlement, which I think is funny because my kids are really spoiled. But they get bugged with other people being entitled. And especially as my daughter, who's 24 now, as she's worked in, she's been on her own for a while. And the things that she used to not care about, now she has to work with these people that are entitled. It drives her crazy because and again, she's like, I just see the world differently because of the way that I was raised. And not that we're some like God's gift to raising kids, because heaven knows we've made a lot of mistakes. But I think that one thing that we did really well was that we traveled and we gave our kids and ourselves a new perspective on what the world is, how you fit in it, how it works, and all that stuff, And so there's research to back this. So there was a study, again, I'm going to quote some of this stuff. It was a study from 2014 that found that after vacations, workers demonstrated improved cognitive flexibility, which is a key component in creative and innovative problem solving. I think that that's really important. And I've watched my son, as he's in the Dominican Republic right now, working through a lot of problems and issues. One of the things he hasn't had to work through at all is adaptation to the area, to be in a new place, new language, new food, new culture. Within days, he was like, no, I freaking love it here. He's like, I could live here the rest of my life. Like there was no issue with changing that. But he also had the ability to come at problems with a little bit wider perspective of this cognitive flexibility. It's been cool to watch this 19-year-old kid struggle in certain ways, but certainly have an advantage in that cognitive flexibility. It's been cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes stepping away from the business is exactly what your business needs. Yeah, it allows you to, like I said, allows you to see things. It allows your kids to see and solve problems and realize what is a problem and what really isn't a problem, right? I mean, and so it improves, one, not just your creativity, but your opportunity to see the world and to see your own problems in a different view. We've taken all of our kids all of them except one so far, to Africa. And you want to see a world where there's lots of problems. Take your kids to Africa, where you see actual problems, see it like real problems. We don't have any
Real
real
problem.
problems here, right? I mean, like, and so when they see those things now, it's just this last week at Lake Powell, we had an incident with a boat, not ours, but where they hit a sandbar and did some damage to a prop, and our kids were there without us, without our parents. They were on a different boat, and the report back from another parent was, I can tell that these two kids are the kids of Jared and Marin Hill, because when this happened, there was no panic. It was no big deal. It was like, oh, hey, give me the goggles. I'll go down and see what damage is done. We'll figure it out. And it was nighttime. It was dark. It was a time when a lot of people would have panicked, but it was like, yeah, you know what? We're not really in danger, right? This isn't really an issue. And I think that they've learned that through travel and seen that they've seen what actual danger is, what issues are, and so forth. Not that we ever put our kids in danger intentionally, but they have the opportunity to see these things that you don't see. You see travel and vacation. It helps kids grow up faster than not doing that. And it doesn't take, I grew up poor. It doesn't take a ton of money to do that. You can travel, you can, find ways to do it that are very affordable. But as dentists, I'm assuming mostly dentists are listening to this podcast. If you're not a dentist, I'm not sure why you're listening to the podcast, unless you're my mother.
Curiosity. Yeah. Thanks, Joan, for listening. We appreciate you supporting the podcast.
Yes. But you're probably going to have the means to travel. So this is, take advantage of those opportunities, man. This is a great profession to be able to take time away and to explore the world.
Yeah. And I think that to add a fifth vacation to your list, Jared, and this is the segue I've kind of been waiting for, is find a chance to take either yourself or your family to do some humanitarian aid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
whatever that looks like. We do ours in Africa. Obviously, you guys have probably heard about this before, but if you haven't, check out Dental Legacy Foundation and see what we're doing, and see if that's something that's a good fit for you. We've had several docs bring their families with them. And we mean families, like not just their spouse or significant other, but their kids. And it is, that is a life-changing experience. Like Jared was just saying, it is so formative for these kids to experience something like that. And talk about a novel experience. You don't get much more novel than going to Africa. Like Tanzania is an incredible place that has taught our kids, or our son who came with it, but has taught us, Lindsay and I, things that man, there's no way that I'm going to learn that stuff anywhere else. So it's such a cool opportunity to go and do something that technically we count it as part of our vacation, even though we're working. We're not working on the practice. I'm utilizing my skill set in a completely different way, in that the what I'm trying to accomplish, the purpose of using my skill set is completely different, right? Like, it's such a good way to recharge your batteries. I think, as we talk about recharging the batteries, recovery, I think we need to talk about that too, because if you look at professional athletes, right, part of their training regimen is recovery. Like it's built into their systems. And maybe this is a something we should talk to Kat and Jeremiah about it on another podcast. But recovery is massive. They just did a post on school, on our Elevation Association social network on school. They did a podcast about recovery a few months ago, and how important recovery is. But you think about not just the physical recovery, but how important it is to have psychological recovery too, right? Like that's huge.
Yeah, and I think it's both. Having gone through recently, this health change where I've done a few bodybuilding competitions now, it is I didn't realize how much recovery is how important recovery is for performance. Yeah, the better you can recover, the higher you can perform. And if you don't take time to recover, what happens? Things get strained, right? And if you're working out, you're lifting a ton and you don't take time to rest and recover efficiently, you start to strain muscles. And then what happens? Then you can't use those muscles. Then it's forced recovery, right? Think about that in our profession. If we don't take the time off and we jack up our back or our neck, or we have carpal tunnel syndrome because we don't take the time off to properly take care of ourselves, then now you're forced recovery, and that recovery sucks, right? It's better to choose your recovery ahead of time and to learn how to recover, rest, relax, and come back more energized, ready to do the next workout, whatever that is, the next 3 months of work before you take the time off. I mean, it's recovery. Like the vacation isn't the reward. Like the vacation is awesome, but it's part of the learning process. It's part of in bodybuilding, recovery is part of the training process. And if you think about it in dentistry, the recovery, the vacations can be part of your training process as you are practicing dentistry. And I think that's how we need to look at it, as not just, oh, it'd be a good thing, but essential, right? This is essential in order for me to not strain, to burn something, to pull something, and then be forced to stop or to quit.
Yeah. And on the flip side, psychological recovery in some ways is even harder.
Hmm.
Uh, it's, I think part of it is because it's way less measurable. It's so much more. When I tore my bicep, I knew every time I lifted a weight, it freaking hurt. So it wasn't like that hard to figure out. Like, but psychological recovery, when you're psychologically injured, which to me is burnout, or just straight up like hating your job. Um, I think that recovery is way more difficult. And I think too that like that whole idea of an ounce of prevention, right? Getting ahead of it, I think is the same thing. The principle applies both physically and psychologically. Is getting ahead of it is so important. I absolutely love doing dentistry. I love dentistry, but I also know that if I don't take time away, and going back to the principle that you taught me, was that, look, if you don't get ahead of this thing, it'll eat you up. It will eat you up. And it's just a matter of time. So you have to make sure that you're giving yourself proper recovery time.
Yeah.
Um, I want to transition really quickly into we talked about it, said we were going to talk about it earlier, but I think this is really important because we hear all the freaking time with the EA is docs coming and saying, I can't afford to take time off. I hate that comment so much. And and I hate it not because of the comment itself. I hate it because those docs really feel trapped, and it's painful to hear them say it. And they say it with a lot of earnest and frustration, but we hear it all the time, man. Like I can't afford to take time off. Right. So, and I think that and you talked about this earlier when you were talking about, you know, the four types of vacations, that it's not a vacation problem. It's a planning problem. Right.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think this is the trap. The trap of especially the single doctor practice. Um, is I can't even put it on the calendar because what happens? What happens to my patients? What happens to my staff? Oftentimes, your team members live paycheck by paycheck. They have to get paid. You feel guilty for taking time off now because now they're not going to get paid, or your patients aren't going to be seen. What happens if there's an emergency? You've got yourself into maybe a bigger house or a car payment or something that you have, and so, yeah, you see yourself as completely unable to take this time off, and it's a trap. It is a real trap that I feel because I was caught in that trap for like 10 years before I was able to finally be like, look, I have to do this, or I'm gonna leave the profession. Right?
right.
That's what it was. That's really
Yeah.
what it was.
Because you're being reactionary. Not that wasn't recovery. That's freaking burnout. You know what I mean? That's like, yeah. And then we've talked a lot about that. You shared your story with that, and I think it's so poignant and important. And I love, Jared, that you figured it out. Like I think you did it out of necessity, but you know, necessity is the mother of all invention. I think that you've had to finally got to a point where you hit that crossroads and you're like, all right, I got to figure something out. But I think that what you found out was brilliant. And we talked about it earlier, and it's calendaring your days, because the the problem is that people, they budget, they look at it backward. You know, they don't plan accordingly. So, it's, like you said, they have all these rationale for not taking vacation. If I leave, everything's going to fall apart, right? And it's because they're not planning it correctly. So you have to budget your working days. So instead of asking how many vacation days can I afford, that's wrong. Okay, time to rewrite that. So we're going to share with you guys now. This is the Jared J. Hill vacation methodology for survival in dentistry. Let's quote that. There's probably a better name for that, but that's what we're going to call it today.
I like it.
So I think instead of asking, you know, how many days of vacation can I afford, you have to ask, how many days do I actually want to work this year? Which
I
is
like
what you did, right? You took the calendar, you busted the calendar, and then you reverse engineered it all once you mapped out the calendar and said, okay, I want to work this many days this year. You know, if it's 165, 175, whatever, um, figure that out and then map it out on your calendar and then reverse engineer it. So the example that we'll do, let's say that your annual production goal is 2.4 million. Okay. That you're trying to produce that. So instead of taking that and dividing it by 52 weeks, subtract your vacation, subtract your CED, subtract your holidays, and subtract your planning retreats. So if you intended to work 45 weeks, that's the denominator. The vacation wasn't lost. It was planned. It was worked into it. And like you said, Jared, once you have that calendar planned, we hand it to our assistants and our hygienists and our front office, and we say, okay, plan your vacation around this time. And with two docs, it's a little easier in our office, and we get that and we can appreciate that. But it can be done with a single doc and say, okay, I'm taking vacation here. You have the entire year to plan this out. So try to plan it around the time that we'll be gone, because the office will probably be closed on these days. And then allow your people to work through that on their own. They can figure it out.
Yeah, in order for me to do this, I had to actually have somebody give me permission to take time off. Meaning, I had to have somebody tell me, The most productive dentists generally work about 170 days a year, period. Not 180, not 190, not 200 days a year. The most productive dentists generally work 170 days a year, more or less, 165 to 172. I can't think, something along the lines there. And I had to have somebody say, you need to take these weeks off. And so I'm that person now. I'm going to tell all the dentists who are listening to this, all 6 of you, listen, I'm giving you permission to only work 175, 170 days a year. And I'm giving you permission to take this time off ahead of time. And like Dan said, don't divide your production, your yearly goal by 52 weeks. That blows the plan up in the water, right? Take out those 4 weeks or whatever it is, whatever vacation you want to take. Take out the CE. Even if you don't have it planned for sure what you're doing, take out a couple weekends for CE. Look at the holidays ahead of time. If you want to take your birthday off and the day after, whatever it is. And then if you have any sort of any sort of planning retreats, you take a couple days or a week to do that. Take all those times off. If it's 45 weeks, and then if you're like, oh man, that puts me at a daily goal that I can't accomplish, throw in a couple extra days here and there, maybe a couple extra Fridays or whatever it may be. You will be surprised. You will be shocked at the goal that you'll be able to hit when you say, we need to hit this in order for me to be able to take off this vacation. You will make the changes and it will force you to make the changes and accommodations you need to make in your practice to be more efficient, more productive. Because there's room in your schedule. I promise you, there's room in your schedule to be more efficient and more productive. But if you do things the way you've always done them, you will never find those opportunities. And this forces you to find those opportunities.
Yeah, we were on a retreat. One of the retreats, the EA retreats we were on, Dr. Brad Smith, the former dean of Midwestern University, had joined us. We were talking about this principle, and he brought up that when he was in practice in California, that he and his partner did this, and they decided they were going to work less that upcoming year. And so they sat down with their calendar and they mapped out how much time they planned on taking off. And he said, he really believed in this principle. He said, we found ways to become more efficient. We actually produced more when working less days, because what that did was it forced us to find ways to be more efficient on a daily basis. He said, so we were actually way more productive in the shorter span that we had than the year prior because of that. And that was an interesting thing, because it put them a little bit in the pressure cooker, right? Where they had to figure out ways and solutions to problems that they were just letting go before. So I love that principle. And it's something that we found smacks true with a lot of offices we work with, is that if you condense your work schedule down, you're going to find ways to be just as productive, because it's going to force you to be more efficient and more optimized. And we can definitely help with that as well. That's one of the reasons that Elevation Association exists, is to help offices to figure out how to become more efficient, more optimized, make more money per hour. Like, that's the purpose, right? Like, that's the whole idea, is to become, as Scrooge McDuck said from DuckTales as a kid, work smarter, not harder.
If you look at it that way, your vacation could be considered maybe like a diagnostic tool, meaning by forcing you to, by taking those vacations, you're forced to look at your systems, and maybe you have a weak system. Be like, oh man, if this system doesn't allow me to take a week off, I have an issue, right? Or if I can't figure out how to delegate this to be gone, to take a week off, then this vacation becomes this diagnostic tool to diagnose a poor delegation, or maybe you don't have the right documentation, maybe whatever it is, right? You're maybe running a dictatorship, or your over dependence on the actual owner, right? So this then becomes a diagnostic tool for you. Maybe if that helps you to look at it that way, then use it as a diagnostic tool to make your practice better, is taking a vacation.
I love it. Okay, so let's wrap this up, Jared. One of the themes that's kind of been prevalent through this, and I want to come back to, is that the goal of building a successful practice isn't to become indispensable, right? You shouldn't be. I think back to, we did a hiking trip, and Dr. Jason Campbell said, my goal in my practice is to get to the point where they don't need me. I freaking love that. And I've actually kind of adopted that a little bit as one of my goals, is that to train a team and get a team to be where I'm not necessary for the practice to be successful. So the goal of building a successful practice isn't to become indispensable. It's to create enough freedom that you can step away and return a better leader, recharge, recover, all these things we've talked about, so that you can come. And not just, we're just talking about being a practice, but what about being a mother or a father or whatever other roles you have, right? We haven't even touched the surface on that part of it. That's a huge component as well. So that's hopefully what you guys walk away from this is to kind of reassess your goals of like, oh, it's not just etching out time away. The goal is to help you to be a more effective leader, a more effective person within the different roles that you play in life, because you are taking care of yourself, taking care of your loved ones by providing this time that you otherwise maybe aren't looking at or feel that you can't afford.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. It's actually very productive to take time off, even though you're not being productive in the office, right? And it's one of the tenets or foundations of a high performer. And if you want to be a high performer, you really need to learn this skill and accept it, and practice it, and get better at it, and do it. And I think this is great. Thanks, Dan, for bringing up this topic today. This is something that I think it goes undervalued a lot of times in our profession, and needs to be talked about and planned out, and we could talk about this more. I do think that in Belize in February, we'll definitely talk about this more. I think this is a great topic for conversation.
Totally. Okay, as always, check us out on elevationassociation.com if you want to get more information about some of these retreats that we build in, because we believe in putting our money where our mouth is and providing opportunities to go and recharge. Like Jared said, we're going to Belize in February. It's backed by popular demand. We're going to Belize. That's an epic vacation. So check that out. Check us out on Instagram. Check us out on Facebook, and don't forget to check out school, Elevation Association at School. SKOOL. And as always, if you guys have any other questions, you want to chat about something, just need a vent, or want to take a deeper look into your practice, reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you. So until next time, cheers.
Thanks. Adios.